You don't have an objection to this recording, the audio? I don't know whose audio that is.
This is just gentlemen here.
Okay. Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Did you want to see makeup before we started, anybody, Mr. McNamara?
No, Judge.
Okay.
Makeup would be useless.
Okay. This is the case of the People versus Harry W. Murray. Record should reflect that there were media requests, which I am now filing with the court, in the court file, from Mr. Bowman and also Mr. Bolt. And I've asked Mr. Murray and his backup counsel this evening, Mr. Kerrigan, as well as Assistant District Attorney Jordan McNamara, if there's any objection. There being no objection, the court will allow it. Cameras are now set up. Record should reflect that following a non-jury trial on January 27, 2016, this court found Mr. Murray guilty of trespass in violation of Penal Law Section 140.05, and sentence was put over to this evening. Mr. Murray, is there any legal reason why sentence cannot be imposed this evening?
No, Your Honor.
And I would ask you, if you want to consult with your attorney, please do so. Just let me know when you want to do that.
Okay, thank
Your
you.
backup counsel, Mr. Kerrigan. People move sentence.
So moved, Your Honor.
People wish to be heard.
Judge, briefly, the defendant was found guilty after a non-jury trial in front of Your Honor. The evidence was pretty clear and right in front of us about what happened. And I think that Mr. Murray needs to take responsibility for it. And I think he deserves 15 days in jail. I mean, this has gone on long enough. Everyone knows the rules up there, and there's continued and ongoing refusal to comply with them. And Mr. Murray very well knew what he did was wrong when he did it. And I think he needs to take some responsibility for it. So I request that you sentence him to 15 days, and as well as an order of protection for offender of the base.
Okay, Mr. Murray, do you wish to be heard?
Yes, Your Honor. Okay. If I may, in my sentencing memo, I outlined an understanding of civil disobedience and how it works. Apologies to my comrades who I know prefer civil resistance. I also argued that judges in a variety of ways can play what you might call an affirmative role in civil disobedience. And I asked you to make a statement of the drones. Mercifully, I won't read that memo, but I'd like to briefly address some complementary issues. One thing is that when I wrote the memo, I neglected the fact that you have addressed the drones at least somewhat. On February 7th, 2014, you told the Hancock 17, "War is evil. It leads to senseless killing and destruction. Whether it's the pilot in a plane several thousand feet in the air dropping a bomb, the missile operator on a ship or a submarine pushing a button, or a drone operator several thousand miles away on a joystick or pushing a button, there's no difference. There's going to be death and destruction. Often it will involve innocent civilians and children. It's a cold fact of war. No reasonable person, in my mind, would ever wish for war. Unfortunately, there are those in this world that are either power-hungry or tyrannical, and they must be stood up to, lest we all become lambs led to the slaughter." I can agree with much of your statement until we get to "they must be stood up to" and the apparent implication that war is a legitimate way to stand up to someone. As you know, for me and for many of my friends, the gospel precludes war. Admittedly, the vast majority of Christians do not agree, and we know that shortly after Constantine proclaimed Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire, The church, through Ambrose and Augustine, adopted the just war theory from Cicero and the Roman Officialis priesthood. Since Hugo Grotius, international law tradition has adopted the just war principles. And this tradition says that standing up to tyrants is not a carte blanche. Just as you have argued that there are limits to free speech, so there are limits to the extent to which wars can be just and as to which weapons and techniques are allowable. Chemical and biological weapons have been outlawed by international law. So have landmines, although this ban was, to our shame, adopted without U.S. participation. Henry David Thoreau conveyed the deadly seriousness of these limits to war when he wrote of slavery and of the Mexican-American War, quote, "This people must cease to hold slaves and to make war on Mexico, though it cost them their existence as a people. In short, we may not, in the interest of ensuring that we do not become lambs led to slaughter, become ourselves the wolves who slaughter other lambs, not even if we blithely call it collateral damage." Gandhi and Rawls agree that civil disobedience should be invoked only for issues of life and death, even supreme importance. I believe that weaponized drones constitute such an issue. I must admit, when I first learned about drones, I was skeptical about that. Most of my previous civil disobedience has been over the issue of the nuclear arms race. And that clearly is an issue of supreme importance, with one bomb capable of killing millions of people and, a full-scale nuclear war capable of eliminating the human race, or at least everyone who lives on the northern hemisphere. Drones, on the other hand, kill 3 or 4, 30 or 40, or even 100 persons at a time. You add them up all together and they wouldn't begin to approach the disaster of a single nuclear weapon. And yet there's a harsh symmetry here. Nuclear weapons, as I said in my Travato lecture, are the ultimate modern weapon. Mass destruction for a mass society. Drones, on the other hand, are the ultimate postmodern weapon. Not weapons of mass destruction, not a master narrative, to use some of their bizarre language, but a technology that really obliterates space and time, allowing someone sitting at Hancock Air Base to kill someone half a planet away in real time. Drones also obliterate the very crucial line between war and peace, turning the whole planet into a permanent war zone, subjecting children to perpetual terror from the buzz of deadly drones overhead. The cheapness of drone strikes, in terms of both money and political risk, makes it more likely that a president will use them, thus increasing the likelihood of an incident that leads to a, quote, real war. Drones, far from being an effective way of standing up to dictators and terrorists, have terrorized much of the world and have made the Middle East and Africa more dangerous places. Even in the period since you addressed the Hancock 17, the Middle East has become engulfed in what could reasonably be called a regional war. U.S. drone strikes have fostered civil war in Yemen and Libya, have left Iraq and Afghanistan in endless cycles of war, have contributed to the rise of ISIS. Jeremy Scahill in Dirty Wars documented how the U.S. policy of drone strikes, special ops, and alliance with warlords transformed al-Shabaab from an unimportant group into a regional terrorist organization. 5 of the top 7 countries from which refugees have come to Europe in the past year have experienced U.S. drone strikes over the past decade. Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Somalia. Drones were certainly not the only cause, but I submit that they contributed to the destruction that's led to that massive exodus. Other nations, most notably Saudi Arabia and Yemen, and Russia in Syria, have adopted the U.S. policy of bombing other countries with no declaration of war, laying the foundations for a true regional war. Drones have been part of a policy that have made the region and the world a more dangerous place. All of this is directly relevant to the town of DeWitt. Despite the federal government's policy, spoken of by Lieutenant Colonel Laurie in this courtroom, that the number of children killed by drones flown out of Hancock is classified information, not available to the public in this democracy, there is good reason to believe that homicides are being committed in Onondaga County. The bodies are not here, but the triggers which launch the Hellfire missiles, which obliterate those bodies, are right inside Hancock Air National Guard Base. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, to everybody, I want to apologize for the last minute unavailability yesterday, and I thank you for your willingness to accommodate the court, putting this on for this evening. I know it's been a difficult evening, long evening, because I had other matters on. Firstly, I want to thank you for the well-written and informative sentencing memorandum that you submitted. I did find it helpful in arriving at a sentencing decision for this evening. The conflict that still remains in my own mind regarding the limits of civil disobedience really relates more to the philosophies of John Rawls, which in my mind mirrors the definition of civil disobedience which was expounded by Thoreau. They're quite similar. The basic premise, as I understand it, is that the individual must judge for themselves whether a law is just. To be acknowledged, a law to be acknowledged and complied with, and that causes me great concern. Particularly as we are all seeing today daily throughout the world, there's no homogeneous belief among peoples as to what is just. I'm sure that a terrorist feels justified in their horrific and violent actions towards jihad, going against common laws which are established for people to exist by. You and I certainly would agree that a limit exists between nonviolent and violent actions, but is not the terrorist justified in their own mind to break the established law? I don't agree with it, but in their own mind they may feel justified. In my mind, it goes back to what Locke and Rousseau always said, that the natural state of the individual rule and decision must give way to some extent for the betterment of all mankind, lest there simply be anarchy and chaos. So there has to be some common set of rules for the good of everybody. The question in my mind remains, what are the limits, and by whose standards do those limits exist? This court believes, and you may disagree, that I've always attempted to remain fair and accommodating to your position and those of your fellow co-defendants. But quite frankly, there's been very little reciprocation or willingness to understand the position of the court or to enter into any compromise situation or any middle ground. At times I felt personally the attitude of the group to be that they are right and everyone who does not agree with their position is wrong in their view. Our form of government encourages divergent views as a means of arriving at well-reasoned decisions or changes. In my opinion, the group as a whole is unwilling to even acknowledge any divergent position. It is their way or no way. That to me is not democracy, it's dictatorship. Now I know that I will be criticized by your group for my comments today, but you asked me in the sentencing memorandum to make my thoughts known, and you asked me specifically to do that, and that's what I'm doing. I truly believe that the first trial, the so-called Hancock 38, was fruitful. I observed discussions and discourse occurring within the community at large concerning the issue of the use of drones. That's what the objective was, to get that issue out in the public. As these trials have continued to multiply, I observed something else. I observed the discussion to be less about the issues of the drone usage and more about the protests themselves and the resulting trials. In fact, during one of the prior jury trials, I was personally shocked, and I said so during the challenge conference in Chambers to that particular defendant and backup counsel, that the jury responds to the defendant's question about their feelings about targeted foreign killings through the use of drones. He received the response after the poignant silence and the stares of all on the jurors' faces, such as a herd of deer getting caught in the headlights. One of the jurors raised their hand and said, "I do not know what you are talking about." And that shocked me. Clearly, in my opinion, the current actions are not resulting in the conveyance of the information about what the cause you're trying to portray. I know in your sentencing memorandum, I know that you cite the proposition that it is not the effectiveness of your actions that matter, but to me, I believe that the actions have become the cause and not the very important discussion that should be occurring in the general public. And to me, that's truly a shame. The discussion should be about the drones in the general public and not about these trials. Personally, I don't know how I feel about the use of the drones in the current configuration. I have had the same issue you had initially. I see the arguments on both sides. I'm conflicted. The drones are a tool of war. And like any other tool of war, as you've indicated, I've said previously, I don't think there's any reasonable person that would ever disagree that peace is preferable to war. I hope there's nobody out there that would think otherwise. But unfortunately, people do exist in the world that do not share in that belief for whatever reason. And again, I firmly believe that there has to be some protection at some level, lest we be lambs to the slaughter. But in fact, my personal beliefs do not matter in the context of the current case. This is a case of trespass, the improper and unlawful remaining on property without permission. I've said it before that I don't want to curtail your rights to protest and get the issue out there. But it's an issue of, I still don't understand why the protest at one designated area, which is next to the road, which obviously some people are seeing as they're going by, why there has to be a blocking of the roadway. I just don't see the differentiation. While I understand, you know, and we've joked about this, about what you told your students. While I understand that your students may be unhappy with my decision, my sentencing decision today, as you apparently had promised them A's if you went to jail, I'm not going to jail you for expressing your opinions and convictions. I am going to sentence you in relationship to what I believe is the unlawful action of the trespass blocking that at the roadway area. If jail is to result, it's going to be from you. You deciding to be discourteous to the authority of this court by willfully deciding to disobey and purposely choosing to violate the sentence and order of this court. To me, that's a different level. I take that personally. It's an order of the court. I expect there to be some acknowledgement that you're going to abide by it. Again, in my mind, there is a difference in the sentencing considerations upon a willful defiance to the authority of this court In other words, a contemptuous behavior on the part of the actor showing a lack of